I totally forgot because I just started and then I stopped it. Okay,
Okay.
good. Okay, go ahead.
So, yeah, they, them being starting to enter the culture um is a relief, I suppose, because, I have always had struggled with my gender assigned at birth. I'm assigned female at birth, and my uh that was it never really fit. It never fit. And I didn't really feel like a boy exactly. So I really didn't have a place for me. I just knew that, you know, I even being little, being called a girl, or like when the teacher would say, okay, boys to the left and girls to the right, or, things like that, like it just never really, it always kind of felt incorrect. And so it was actually teenagers in my life who were embracing their gender fluidity and exploring their gender in a way that um I'm queer. I'd always been queer, and had been out for years and years as like a bisexual and all of that kind of thing. But like there was always a gender aspect that I didn't have the verbiage for.
Yeah.
And learning that that was a thing that existed and you could be that way, and to have people, start to recognize that as valid and be respectful of it, that was life changing. Now, people still, maliciously or not, um do get it wrong, and that, that's, if it's someone at the grocery store in passing, whatever. But if I've invited somebody into my life um to be a part of my life, or like my employer or things like that, when they're sort of still committed to misunderstanding, or um in not going, putting a little effort into, you know uh referring to me correctly, that's hurtful.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's wonderful. I think it's really useful. I think there are, infinite ways to have a gender or not, you know,
Yeah.
and these sort of restrictions are colonial in origin. They
Yeah.
don't reflect um indigenous beliefs. They don't respect non-Western beliefs. They people outside of the male and female binary have existed since there have been people, you know,
Yeah.
and they've been sanitized out of public life. And now we're seeing an effort, a genocidal effort by the state in some cases, to legislate trans people out of existence.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I think we talk about a little bit more, but I love what you're saying. It's great. It's so good. Okay. What are what are some common misconceptions about the LGBT plus community that you would like to dispel?
Well, I think right now a lot of the rhetoric coming out of even previously uninterested sources, even certain liberals, right? Like they are suggesting that to be queer is to be a pervert, like it's an ancient tactic. You're looking back to, the early 20th century, you can see the same exact playbook playing out again. So they're vilifying the trans people first, saying, like these people are grooming children, while meanwhile, it's when you see pedophiles getting caught, it's never
No.
it's never people from this group. It's always, these straight white fathers, brothers, dads, people of people with some social capital, more
Yeah.
often than not. Um, and so I think for certain
Luna, sorry. Luna, no. She's trying to, she growls at like almost everything. Sorry, go
good for
ahead.
her. Good
Okay.
for her.
I'm like, I'm the
Uh,
same.
she's doing her best.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that that one is a big one. It's absolutely not a fact that, you know, just by virtue of doing gender differently or having a different, you know, attraction does not a pedophile make, you know.
And you
That's
said this is
wild.
like a repeat of like history
Oh
when,
yeah,
so it's
absolutely.
just like, yeah,
So
I
when
feel
you're
like
looking,
we go forward and then we go back, you
yeah,
know?
no, I mean, like culture's a pendulum. But when you see photos of Nazis burning books, the books that they're burning are out of the gender clinic's lab,
Ugh,
right? So like the that those were the first people that they went after as well. And I mean, not to be like everything I don't like is a Nazi. Like this is genuinely fascistic behavior. And that's the, I mean, you got to call a spade a spade. That's exactly what they are doing. You know, when you're saying, oh, okay, these books about queer people or children's books about queer people, these um books like, you know, Heather has two mommies, or you know, those little classics, right? They are apparently dangerous and will make the children gay if they see them. You know, if they're ever in the same room with them, the children will become gay. And notably, the primary producer of gay children is straight parents. So
yeah.
you know, it's not them. So it's clearly not the books, right? Like we didn't watch Bugs Bunny turn into drag and then every grown man from there on became a drag queen, you know.
Yeah.
It's it, yeah.
I mean, okay. No, I like that you said culture is a pendulum, which is so true, you know.
Yeah.
It's and it's just it's crazy. It's very interesting to get another like view at, you know, your community like in a different sense. Like I have like a group of people that I hang out with that are part of the community, but like they don't dive deep into it as you are, which and you and Ian like have both brought up like the same thing of like that people are suggesting that, you know, if you're gay, you're a pedophile, and like that's just like, whoa, like I never realized that was the main, you know, what you guys see. I don't know, like
Right,
I don't know how to
right.
explain it. I thought it'd be some a different issue completely, to be honest.
I mean,
um
that's what they're leading with at this point.
yeah.
Like that's what we're seeing come up in this legislation. So it's all about, oh, protecting children, but you're not
Hmm.
protecting children because you're not legislating for children to be fed, housed, educated. You want to
Right.
protect children, you're cutting food stamps.
Yeah, and or
Okay.
look at the communities that are, you know, in central like cities that I
Mm-hmm.
just that need help, that, you know, kids go hungry, they're abusive parents, you know, poor school systems, all of that.
Sure, sure. The foster system is a mess and a
Oh.
nightmare. Like all of those things could genuinely be them moving to protect children, but that's not what happening. And okay, so say you want to protect children from sex crimes, okay, that's a worthy goal. Meanwhile, these same people are trying to protect the church from having to reckon with their own sex crimes, right? Like these people
Hmm.
are doing the exact opposite of what they are claiming to be doing. And then meanwhile, you have all of these people putting up um legislation to ban, you know, drag performances
Yeah.
when they themselves are cheesing from their high school yearbook wearing, you know, a dress and heels, and that's all wholesome and fun when they do it, or Tyler Perry does it, you know, or a straight man like Robin Williams does it, right?
Yeah.
But it's all of a sudden lewd. It's a lewd act when a queer person, you just need to say what you want to say. It's not about the dress, it's about who is wearing the dress.
Yeah. No, you're right. Okay. What do you think is the most pressuring issue facing the LGBT plus community? Would you say that is it right there?
Well, I would
Or
say that that legislation that is gunning for our eradication is it. you know. So and that's what it is. Like, you have legislators up at CPAC saying from the stage that we need to legislate transgenderism out of public life. Okay. That's a genocidal statement, any way you slice it.
Yeah.
And then another issue is internal, right? An internal queer issue, which is within the community, which is people not taking it seriously enough. You know, people resting on, okay, well, we got marriage equality. What else is there? Well, you notice that the only aspects of queer life that the state approves of is marriage and the military.
Yeah.
And those things are about emulating straight people. All right. They want you to have, you know, a monogamous marriage in the suburbs with your golden doodle, and they want you to just go about being as uniform to the nuclear family as possible, right? Like, that's the model that we're supposed to aspire to. That's supposed to be the aspiration. And a lot of gay people don't identify with that
Yeah.
patriarchal structure of a family, right? They don't. Plenty do, and that's cool. They should have the right to do that if that's what they want to do. But the biggest protections are those two things: marriage and the military. Meanwhile, those marriages aren't protected in every state. You can be fired for getting married on a Saturday and come to work on Monday in plenty of places. Still,
Yeah.
you can your adoption is not protected. Your parental rights, if you have a child through, IVF or one of those things, like, your parental rights are not protected
You're
everywhere.
gonna think this is crazy. So I'm a notary,
Mm-hmm.
and my sister's has good friends, and they are, a lesbian couple, and they had two kids, IVF. I think each one of them carried one. And so they had me sign notarize adoption paperwork for both because they were so scared of what was going on,
Yeah.
that they were like, well, I could not have potential rights over my own child, that I
Yep.
worked so
Yep.
hard to to conceive and
Yeah.
have and
Expense, time.
raise. Oh, and then
Yep.
on top of it, I'm also a part of like a nonprofit. I'm on the board of directors for like community legal aid. They provide legal services to people who can't afford it. And they
Mm-hmm.
had a case where he wanted to transition, and he did not feel comfortable in with like his body parts that he had, and insurance like would not cover it or something. And it
Yep.
was also like he had endometriosis and needed it to be removed, and they wouldn't cover it because they considered it to be uh, I'm missing that word.
Elective.
It's elective, even though he's having so much pain and all of this stuff that they were like, oh no, you want to transition, so we're not covering it. It was just so
Right.
horrible. Like, like
Yeah.
you're gonna let him suffer in pain, and not feel okay. Oh my gosh, it was just a mess.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all kinds of things like that. Oh yeah. And doctors deciding, being the arbiter of whether or not you can proceed with your gender transition. Your employer, you have employee health insurance. Your employer can decide that they don't believe in that, and that's been upheld by the Supreme Court. Like, they've been able to, say, oh, we're not going to cover birth control, we're not going to cover that because of our sincerely held beliefs, and those sincerely held beliefs are going to go to the Supreme Court, and that bunch of ghouls is going to decide, in the favor of Hobby Lobby or whatever.
Right.
And so right now, it's really particularly terrifying with that conservative majority in the court. They're not going to rule in favor of a single. Like, you can take all of these uh pieces of legislation all the way to the Supreme Court. Well, what's going to happen? It's going to
Right.
They're going to double down.
Yeah. Look
You
who's
know,
in there right now, like it's just
the fall of Roe
yeah.
portends bad things for the LGBTQ community.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
that the piece of the rationale behind that decision is underpins the rationale but behind Lawrence v. Texas, Obergefell, like all of those queer pieces of Supreme Court decisions, like the one that like Lawrence v. Texas that struck down the sodomy laws, right? On the basis of privacy. Well, the basis of privacy is what underpinned the Roe decision as well. So
Yeah.
that because they decided that that was not valid, that is unconstitutional. Well, that's going to line us up to have all of those things undone. And they're pushing things like that through the courts to get at those decisions. Obergefell and one of the justices wrote in his opinion about the fall of Roe that they should be reconsidering similar things like Obergefell and Lawrence. So that's horrifying to
Yeah.
us because they are going to legislate us out of public life again. And it's going to be done perfectly legally, you know?
And it's just going to be like a slap in the face and you turn around, 'cause
Yeah.
I mean, no one's really talking about that matter. Not a lot of people, like it's not a common conversation that's being had.
Yes.
I mean, like I've heard it brought up like a few times, and it was by my sister, talking about like how scary it is that, Roe gets, turned
Yeah.
and then like everything else.
All those other decisions
Yeah.
are hinging on the same rationale that the penumbra is a thing that they say, which is sort of like it's in the shadow of the law. It's not explicitly stated, but it's sort of like this overlapping piece where, you know, if this is true, then this is also true, is kind of what the legal decision making was for these decisions. And yeah, having undone that one, it just sets the whole thing unraveling. And
Yeah.
that is going to be something that plays out over generations. If those pieces go down because of that pendulum swing, right? The
Yeah.
pendulum's going to be swung hard to the other position. And, you know, I'm worried about things like I am interested in some portion of medical transition. Like I would like to have my breast removed. I would like
Yeah.
to have, but I'm concerned because this government is not trustworthy. They're
Yeah.
collecting data points on who is and is not queer and trans. And I don't like the notion of being on a list to that capacity.
Right.
That is that's a genuine fear of mine because they, like efforts to do things like put an X marker on ID papers or a non-gendered gender marker on there for like the NBs in the crowd. I
Yeah.
think that's dangerous because who then, when the regime changes and we have a conservative government, which it does, is want to do. We usually follow up a Democrat president with a Republican. It's a thing that happens.
Yeah.
Um, and their explicitly stated goals are to, work um, things like anti-abortion into the Constitution and
Right.
work thing and make it and strengthen it so that it's not just a court decision any longer and vulnerable to court action in the future. Like they really want to nail that down, and they will. They
Yeah.
absolutely will.
My sister, right when the whole row thing happened, she was like, you need to delete your app
School
tracker for your
trackers.
period, because she's
Yeah.
like, they're taking data on that on you, So I could just
Yes.
imagine when you do surveys or when you fill out paperwork at the doctor's offices or anything, having to put, your gender on there. I could see where your concerns are, because
Right.
it's everything, there's data, everything's data basically. Everything is tracking, and you talk about one thing to a friend, not on the phone or anything, and your phone's showing you then ads for that one thing,
Right.
or so it's totally zeroing in on market segments, if you want to call it like that, even,
Yep.
different segments of the community to keep track and tabs. So I get that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
The smart advocacy would be to advocate to remove gender markers from,
Yeah.
because what is that? Why? For who? Like, you know what I mean? Why do we need to put whether someone what genitals you have on your driver's license? Why is that relevant to driving a vehicle?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that relevant to, using a passport? It
Yeah.
isn't. So, rather than saying, okay, let's put an X marker, what have you, like, no, let's just not have gender be a part of that conversation. Like, people really tend to gender things wildly for no reason. That gender things that don't need to be gendered. Like, I'm an educator. I never line up my kids, boys versus girls, anything like that, because, like, why?
Yeah.
What are you reinforcing by doing that? Do you do that because you feel like there are inherent differences between boys and girls, and that's not all socialization?
Yeah.
Like, it reinforces bizarre, like, it's a strange thing to do when you get right down to the brass tacks of it. So, you know yeah, I am concerned about our future. While there's been immense progress, like, we get to see ourselves in media in ways that is unprecedented. We get to have these conversations being a part of public life, but the problem with visibility is now bad actors can see you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people with malicious intent are now aware of a community that has always existed, but they didn't know about it. And now sometimes they might have to call somebody they, and now they care.
Yeah.
Now it's about the children. Now it's about, oh, the children are confused. They won't know how to do a gender properly. Listen, if you have no confusion about your gender, hearing about someone who does seems very foreign. But believe
Yeah.
me, to live that and to know that something is not right about your gender, hearing somebody call you correctly by your gender identity is like a bath of cool water. You know what I mean? It's so
Yeah.
nice when people just get it correct.
You
And
feel like you have a seat at the table and like you're just accepted, right?
yeah,
Like
absolutely. It's
it's
just a
just
matter of being
respect.
respected as who
Yeah.
you are, right?
Yeah. Okay. So I have a few more questions for you.
Sure.
Have you ever experienced discrimination or prejudice because of your sexual orientation or gender identity?
Um, yeah, I mean, like, a couple of times. Certainly, I have been fortunate not to experience violence at this hand. Certainly comments, certainly people shouting things when you're out with your partner, especially if you're a little bit, you're not fitting the standard in any real way, so that can be attention grabbing in a not great way. um the biggest one is, with being non-binary, there are always people who will go out of their way to antagonize you because of that. Who will be like, you're always going to be a girl no matter what you do, like that kind of a thing. Like, they need to step out of their lane, say something shitty, and then just vanish into the day. Like, go enjoy the rest of their day after. Like, I remember one time, I had on my pronouns pin, which is a useful piece of equipment while navigating the world. Um,
Yeah.
that can draw out, someone's dad who needs to tell you that that's not a thing, and, oh, the grammar, things like that.
Okay.
Um, I watched one of my coworkers, my place of employment went ahead and hired 3 non-binary people, but didn't really research what that entails.
Yeah.
So um, I use my government name for work because my sibling there at work, my non-binary sib there at work, was not allowed to use their chosen name. They put their dead name on that name tag and force them to wear it
Oh my
while
gosh.
misgendering us every single step of the way. Like, this is my work. This is where I go to, you know, participate in the economy, right? Like, I have to be there,
Yeah.
but they are very slow to get on board and calling people correctly by their correct pronouns. Like I will see, I will get like
Discrimination.
an, yeah, no, I'll get an email chain. I'll get an email chain, and then they'll be like, oh, well, I don't mean anything by it. It's like, okay, you would have no problem calling a girl who got married Mrs. So and so, you know,
Yeah.
and if you were to slip up, you would be apologizing profusely.
Yeah.
Right. You have no problem with that little change, but you do have a like, oh, well, I'm old. I just don't get it. Like, da da da. It's like,
You
okay,
can't.
you can try. And that's no excuse. Some of my best friends are people who are in their 70s and they call me by my correct name and pronouns every time.
Yeah.
It is not an age thing. Are you
No.
saying that people who are a little bit older are intellectually incapable of this? Like, no.
It's a
You
lazy, it's a inconsiderate and just lazy, you know?
correct. Yeah. So you're seeing, like I'll see an email chain where I'm being discussed, wrong pronouns. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's aggressive. And it's when it once is whatever, but when it's consistent and constant, then that is exhausting.
And when it's at your place of work too, where they should have respect for all employees, you know?
Right. And
So,
then like, oh, we asked to have our pronouns on badges or have like a separate pin or something that we could have just to make those interactions a little bit less painful and awkward throughout the
yeah,
day. That was a bridge too far. We can't do that. So that is still an ongoing discussion. And I know that one of our managers finally went in there and said, you guys got to get it together because you have hired these people and you need to talk to them and about them correctly.
yeah,
So at least we do have an advocate, but it is it's an uphill battle. And I'm privileged in other ways, so I do make it my problem, you
if
know.
my sister heard this, so my sister's an attorney, and
Uh-huh.
like she is very proactive and like she's passionate because she's a discrimination and wrongful termination employee or
Yeah.
attorney, and like she's had like several cases like this, and she was also on that, she's on the board of directors with me with that nonprofit,
Uh-huh.
and she was like one of the main attorneys that helped with that one case I was telling you about. And she would just be appalled that,
Yeah.
your company
Yeah.
is doing this, it's just not, it's not okay, it's not,
It's
I don't
not.
know. It's
And the thing about it is that this is better than many,
yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
you
I
know.
have no doubt, no doubt at all.
My coworkers who are also non-binary are a bit younger than I am, you know. So they're really, really rattled by it. And I'm like, oh my dears, it is worse ever, especially education is a weirdly gendered profession to begin with.
Yeah,
Right. Everybody wants to be Mr. or Miss, and you get like I go into schools and give assemblies and I could put my pronouns on the email. I'm gonna be your instructor for this. My pronouns are they, them, you know, like I could do that all I want. I'm still gonna get in that classroom and have that teacher go, oh, this is Miss Melissa, regardless of what I say.
jeez.
And
So
when I was a classroom teacher, my principal wouldn't allow me to not go by like an honorific like that. I couldn't just use my first name. And I was like, I would prefer to just use my first name. She's like, absolutely not.
wow, wow.
Yeah, they have
So
a lot of control over what you say and do.
can I ask you, how do you cope with all of this?
Um, vent, feel frustrated, smoke weed. Like that's it. Like and then I continue to advocate as well. I continue to advocate. Like I am like older and meaner than my coworkers are, so I will absolutely aggressively correct people.
I feel like you're also you have like a higher education understanding too,
Yeah,
and where you like you're able to express yourself just a lot better than most people.
thank you.
So I mean it's really it's impressive.
Thank you. Um, yeah, well, I mean, like I feel like I have to know. I'm the type of person where Like I want to know the meteor's coming. So I
Mhm.
follow the news carefully and I do reading and I try and be as tuned into it as possible because they're doing this stuff whether we want it or not, whether we're paying attention or not. You know,
Yeah.
if we want to have a fighting chance against this mechanized evil that is just like this tumor on society that they feel like that we don't have real problems to solve, that we need to like be banning drag queen story hour, that that we have to forcefully birth children for the state and not have the funds to care for them, not have the a worthy education for them, not have food to put in their bellies, right? That's
Yeah.
all the specter of communism. But like meanwhile Tasha Davis can't sit there and read you know don't let the pigeon drive the bus to children because that's lewd.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So how can allies best support the LGBT plus community?
Oh, believe us when we say that the motivations here are to eradicate. All right, not to say, oh, you're overreacting, you're being histrionic, this is not what's happening. Oh well, maybe drag is for adults, and maybe like playing devil's advocate. Nobody needs that. The devil has plenty of advocates, Steve. you know
Yeah.
you don't need to, even people who say that they're allies. And then also remember that ally is an action. It's not something you get to self-declare, right? We'll be the judge of that. If you're going to be an ally, then you need to be out there speaking up, utilizing your privilege, weaponizing your privilege, and stepping to those who want to say these untruths about our community.
Yeah. Are there any resources, organizations that you'd recommend for people who want to learn more about the LGBT plus community or get involved?
Sure, absolutely. So I think that there are a lot of good sort of uh activist there's awesome activists out there like Alok v Manon on Instagram, um Matt IV on Instagram as well, are always sharing excellent content.
Say names for me one more time, please,
Yeah, let me just, I'm gonna pull it up so that I can properly say it to you.
because I'll probably throw this in the project.
Sure. So Alok is on Instagram under ALOK
ALOK,
VMENON.
BMENON.
Yeah, so V is in Victor, MENON. Yeah.
Got it.
All right. And then the other one, Matt
Uh-huh.
XIV, is Matt Bernstein. He's really good. Another one,
IB or IV? I'm sorry.
IV is in Victor.
Perfect.
Another one is L Duran. So ELLE and then DERAN. So Alok and Al are both trans non-binary experience people. Also, Pink Manta Ray is Skylar Balar, and he is a trans man and an athlete, a swimmer.
Okay.
Um, I have one more that I'll mention. NISKAPI,
NISKAPI. Sorry.
SUWIN. And this is a two-spirit indigenous queer person. Um, and really great content on indigenous issues as well as LGBT issues. Um, trans and non-binary issues as well. So
Perfect.
yeah, those are some really good jumping off points on Instagram.
Awesome.
Hmm. As
Um,
far as like orgs and stuff like that, I'm a little bit suspicious of the nonprofit industrial complex as it is right now. Just
yeah,
because I've worked in nonprofits my whole life, and I know that even those with great intentions, like HRC, they are really beholden to their board of directors. They're really beholden
yep,
to, they're a tax shelter for billionaires. So, I tend to look towards one another for community building, mutual aid, giving people cash directly, those types of things is sort of the route that my personal activism takes.
okay. And what do you think is the most important thing for people to understand about the LGBT plus? I think we already talked about that.
I think we did, yeah.
Yeah, one second, sorry.
Hmm.
Um, I'm in a group, so like we all throw questions on and then
Okay.
add more if we want. How do you feel about the current state of the LGBT plus rights in our society?
I'm very
Can you kind of
concerned
discuss
about it.
that as well
Yeah,
a
I'm
little bit?
very concerned about it. I'm just very concerned that we are going to be in a position where like people who are not paying attention are going to be very surprised by it. Like I think that people who were not seeing the train coming down the tracks about Roe were very surprised by it. I was not surprised by it because this is what they've said that they were going to do. This is what they've
Yeah.
been doing since that decision was made, right? There's always been, you know, a contingent. And at first, that contingent was very much on the fringe. When Roe first passed, it wasn't that controversial. It wasn't controversial like this. Abortion wasn't even that controversial.
Hmm.
Abortion was a part of healthcare and had been, and there have been old methods of, you know, achieving the same result, right? Like they've been passed on since they made women in the first place. So the the controversy of that was something generated after the fact. It was generated in the late 20th century and it built from there, right? And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, more and more people start like jumping on that bandwagon. It's going to roll very much like that, right?
Hmm.
Where it's a fringe issue that no one is paying attention to until it's not, you know and then all of a sudden, people who would call themselves allies will be like, "Well, I didn't see that coming." It's like, well, get your ear to the track, man. It's coming.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Can you tell me about any important LGBT plus historical figures or events that I may not know about that were probably prominent in your life?
Sure. Okay, so the Compton cafeteria riots was actually the pre-Stonewall, and it's in San Francisco, where this bar frequented by, queer and trans people, was raided. So that one, there's a good documentary about that one, and I think it's available on Amazon freely. Um, so Compton Cafeteria, of course, our Sylvia Rivera and Marsha P. Johnson.
Hmm.
Miss Major is a Stonewall veteran who is still alive, a trans woman who is still doing the work, out there. Um, she's older and disabled nowadays, and doesn't really get around as much as she used to do, but she's someone to look into as well. Um, let's see, the first drag balls in New York City. Then the first person to call himself a drag queen. Um, his name was William Dorsey Swan, and he was known as like the Queen. And that he ran balls and pageants and stuff in New York City in the 1800s. Um, let's see here. The first real sort of sensation as a trans woman. Um, uh, Christine Jorgensen, she kind of was like almost like a socialite, and people
Yeah.
sort of treated her with like interest and curiosity. She was like one of the first um widely known trans women, and she was born in the 20s and passed away in the 80s, and was sort of like one of the notable like gender reassignment surgery people in
Okay.
public life. Yeah, so
Um,
there are a few.
okay. Thank you. No, I appreciate that. I'm gonna let my group know as well. Because I have to present on this for like an hour
Oh
on
wow.
Wednesday and like a whole slideshow. And I'm in a marketing class for multicultural marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And we all got to pick what culture we wanted to talk about and research. And our group, we chose LGBT plus community. And so we're going to be speaking on that. And it's mainly going to be me and another classmate, but
Got it.
feel like this is what you're giving is really great. You and Ian. So I think we're gonna want to use some of your voice clips as
Sure.
well. And I don't know if you wouldn't mind if you want to like share a picture. If you don't want to, it's totally okay.
Sure.
Um,
I'll send one to Ian to use.
yeah. And I think that would be great. But I have about four more questions for you,
Sure.
and then we'll be done. And I really appreciate your time as well.
No problem.
So how did you discover your sexuality or gender identity?
I mean, I remember being 5 or 6 years old and really, like all of my friends were little boys, and I always wanted to be doing little boys stuff with them and like wanted to, you know, I was really put out that I couldn't be standing up, So I would play that I was,
Yeah.
like make believe that I was. Um, so I mean, like that was kind of like me knowing that there were gender issues, and always kind of like I was yeah, that was sort of always in the back of my mind. But like as far as like knowing who I was attracted to, I think I had like my first same-sex crush in 6th grade that I was aware of.
Okay. And what makes you the most proud about your community?
The way that we are capable of taking care of our own, like the way that during the AIDS crisis,
Mm-hmm.
the government was not going to step in. The Reagans were genocidal as hell, like
Right.
they were not interested in helping this community. They thought that they brought it on themselves. But lesbians were less affected, not unaffected, but less affected. And they reached out and supported their gay male siblings, cared for them, made sure that they were advocated for the way that, the ACT UP organization was founded, the type of activism that they were doing in that era, doing things like, pocketing pills when older, or when more well-to-do gays would die, like their families would cover up what they had passed away, but they were who had meds,
Yeah.
because meds were prohibitively expensive. So
Mm-hmm.
like people from ACT UP would come in after they'd passed and pocket the leftover AZT and create like basically a gray market so that other people who were not privileged enough to be able to afford those meds could have access to them and extend their life when they became
Yeah.
available. Like just that amount of caring for ourselves, creating spaces for ourselves. Um, ain't nobody more resourceful than, a poor drag queen.
Mm.
You know, they will make stuff happen. And
Yeah.
that's one of the best things I think about us. Also, we've been making all the culture this whole time. Everything good and beautiful in the world came through the hands of a queer person, pretty much. The jokes are like, oh, you can find gay people in florists shops and dance and art and theater, right? Like these are the people who bring joy to the world.
Yeah. No, I agree. Okay. Has a family member ever treated you differently?
Okay, I have some intensely religious family members. Intensely religious family members. And yes,
Yeah.
they do treat you differently. They are like, my partner hasn't been invited to my aunt and uncle's house ever, but I was welcome to bring male partners there. My uh they don't necessarily say anything derogatory to my face, but they do say sort of out of pocket things. you know I love you, I just hate your lifestyle. It's your lifestyle. It's like, to them it's like, if I decided to paint my living room black, and they'd be like, oh, I don't care for it. Like, that's
Right.
it. Like, it's like they think that it's an opinion, something that I'm doing because it's an option to me.
Right.
Not something about how I actually am, who
Right.
I am as a person. It's that kind of thing. And
Mm.
then, of course, continuing to live and vote as if our life doesn't depend on it.
Okay. Do you shop at any businesses that are LGBT plus ran that you would like to talk about?
Yeah, well, unique to my personal needs, there's a binder company called For Them that
Yeah.
makes an excellent product, and I am really uh, a fan of their work. Um, they do good. Let's see.
Okay.
Um, what are a couple others? Let's see. Um, Wild Fang is another one, clothing company that's pretty good. Uh jumpsuits, and they make a good sort of button-up shirt that's pretty cool. Um, for cosmetics, Kimchi Beauty is owned by a queer Asian drag queen named Kimchi.
Yeah. She's in oh my God, why am I blanking on RuPaul? I feel like I've
Yes, yeah, she
yeah,
was a drag race girl. Yes, she
yeah,
surely was. Um, and really great, like, amazing products, very inexpensive among, like, sort of boutique beauty, um, like
yeah,
Sephora style beauty
yeah.
products. Like, it's actually pretty affordable. Um, and we love that. So that's nice. Um, what others that I can think of? Um, oh, the Babeland sex toy shop is queer owned.
Okay. Babeland.
Babeland.
Babeland. Oh, sorry, Babeland. I don't know if I can put that in there.
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
My
Maybe not.
professor, my
Maybe
professor
not.
is he's gay, so I mean, he might just be totally okay with
Yeah,
all of
no, I
I
think
mean,
I would
not just because, like, he's gay, but, usually they're just more accepting of, like, the I don't know,
more
sexual
a little
nature
bit
of
more sex
things.
positive, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, for
definitely.
sure.
Yeah. So,
Yes.
okay, Babeland. And where's that located?
It's online. It's an
Oh,
online retailer. A lot of these things are online retailers. Um, let's see. Any other ones that I can think of? There's Atomic Gold is um is a jewelry company that's really gender affirming and trans inclusive. Um, so they have some really great, beautiful products, and they use recycled metals. So instead of mining, um, it's called AUTOMIC, atomic, atomic jewelry.
AUTO?
Yeah, yeah.
Got it. Oh,
Atomic gold.
Atomic. Oh, I got okay. I see where
Yeah.
they're going with that.
Yes, yeah. So, oh, that's a really cool company. I like the way that because they're not wanting to be pulling those minerals out of the earth, right? So they use only recycled materials, which is also very cool. And then Both and Apparel makes great clothing for trans mask people where their proportions are just a little bit different to like accommodate wider hips or to maybe hide a bust line. It's just proportioned a little bit different for an AFAB body, but like um, allows you to project a more masculine figure. Mm.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I think that's all for my interview that I need to do.
Okay, cool.
And I totally appreciate your help, you and Ian, so much. I was
Um,
like I lagged so hard